Sheila here with Sirius Stylus Moon, and this is Mars Hour, Saturn Day Mars. Is about to close a cycle with Chiron in the 10th house, and that's a great time to talk about orgasmic birthing versus the current corporational structure. So I'm gonna do a little bit of ASMR of my own pedicure while I am talking about this. So, orgasmic birthing. When we think about orgasming, we think about getting comfortable with looking weird. We think about the fact that just like our actual sex phase can be weird or can be funny, can be, um, you know, not Instagrammable. When we talk about actual sexual experience and the orgasmic birth as a continuum of that, um, both with our voice, with our expression, and there's a lot about this process that basically allows us to birth life. So when I think about entrepreneurial thinking, it's a great ritual of becoming comfortable with our own ridiculousness, of going within into a state where the way we look outside is is not judged by the standards of people that do not have orgasmic birthing experiences. And that doesn't necessarily mean gender because it's basically, when we think about energy and we think about um, the fact that also the male people experience energy. Um, and by the way, one of these notions of, I think even the women that say, "Hey, I'm the person that gave that birthed the baby," and some women don't like men saying, "Oh, we are pregnant," or "We gave birth," even though the men definitely energetically feel things, emotional overwhelm, and they need to be containing and bringing psychically and emotionally and psychologically this birthing into being just as much as the women on a non-physical level, or maybe not just as much, but it's kind of like enough to for that to be overwhelming. And I think a lot of the, well, I'm the one that birthed that baby, is that from that notion of birth as punishment. Because if two people have willingly consensual sex, I'm just thinking with you here. Two people have willingly consensual sex, and they both share like an idea or something that came about. They're not thinking, I'm the one who made that sex. Like, you're just um, and if following that there's a certain idea that would be, let's say, I don't know. Oh, I was thinking about orgasmic birthing as a process of brainstorming and thinking about that as a ritual for when we like launch a business or something. Was that coming up for you as well? Like, that's just normal things to ask if we are having like willingly consensual sex with people that is also spiritual and has an idea origin. Like, with people, I have Libra 8 house, so the Hasta Nakshatra is associated with Paul Dirac, and think about the Dirac Fermi equation, and just how it's kind of like, oh, great minds think alike. Like, we wouldn't even think about, um, you know, it's like it's obvious that that idea was the birthing of, let's say, this ritual. Whereas where the rituals are not consensual, this is where plagiarism begins to come about, particularly when there is, energy looting. But even if energy looting is basically the process of something not being consensual or a dissociation towards something that tries to be the approximate of. Which means that orgasmic birthing and willingly consensual sex that is actually embodied in one sense of self is a prerequisite to discussions about plagiarism. Now, I noticed that when the Me Too was very much associated with plagiarism, it's like there was a sexual harassment or something like that, and then somebody would say, I don't know, the ideas of now here's the thing: it can be that both the two people think about the same idea, but then both of them should be having equal like exposure or is it like there's nothing wrong with saying okay, oh, we both thought about this, or I thought about it from my perspective, another person thought from their perspective. But it shouldn't be no reason why both point of views are equally contributing and supportive. Um, Now, another thing is that the the rituals of humiliations that are happening around the corporate world are not compatible with orgasmic birthing. Now, they seem to, how should I say that? The people that survive these rituals are kind of like they're comfortable with being ridiculous. But that's something that attaining that by orgasmic birthing and orgasmic birthing that are not of transmuting pain to power, but actually willingly consensual union or self pleasures that is with sense of self, which means it doesn't work with, let's say, personality calls the target, the infant, and stuff like that. Those need to dissolve. Um, so this is just one thought about how orgasmic birthing can completely change society and even um, labor culture, or people see it in corporational culture. Um, and that is cross, because orgasmic birthing culture is way more inclusive, and it gets out of the teeter tatter when we think about, oh, white x black, black x white, and so on and so forth. That's just useless. These people are sitting at the same table with the Epstein ring, while being in Trojan War with one another. It's kind of like everybody there thinking that they are going to bring cows and control cows, and everybody there is in a Trojan War with everybody and themselves. But it's not funny because those rituals are very terrible. Um, but it's kind of like depicting from a bird's eye view a picture that's quite ridiculous, but not the ridiculous of like orgasmic birthing. Um, Humiliation negates orgasm. And this is where the people that try to do orgasmic birthing as transmuting pain to power are going with the ritual of use of humiliation rites. Now, because they feel funny not being humiliated, they feel funny being confident. The inclusivity is through degradation there, and it's not really inclusivity. Um, and here is the thing: when they try to combine that with, let's say, the biblical, it doesn't. It's not compatible with Genesis. Like, and And there is no, when you talk about orgasmic birthing, it's not about religious tolerance. By the way, Japan, shout out to Shina Konda, Japan began to prohibit ritual abuse of children in the name of religion. And Japan is far from perfect. I mean, it's so terribly hierarchical. I just think about the videos of people sitting at the restaurant, and the first tier of entry level work is like having to serve everybody else and not even getting their own time to enjoy their meal at the business. Um, but one good thing is that they began to prohibit the religions that tell children that they will go to hell if and so on and so forth are basically now banned in Japan, and I'm like, wow, that's so fucking cool. I just think about things that, a child walks to church and sees a tortured, pinned man to a cross that they're supposed to believe are their savior. Like, what? And feel shame for existing, that a man had to go through this supposedly to save them from something that's not even sin. Is like kind of like, hey, don't rape children so they wouldn't develop gluttony, lust, and so on, hypersexuality of being trafficked. And big shout out to, first of all, Shelley Kamara Hay, that talks about the continuum from sexuality and pregnancy and labor. And let me take a look at the short history. There is um, the the lady that talked about Gen Z Bible tea, but this is, how do I see like her channel without? So wait a second, I don't want to. So this is Gospel and Glam, and this is a lady that was trafficked by One Hit Wonder, and she really honestly talks about like how trafficking caused their hypersexuality, addiction to certain lifestyle, or the monetary, because for her she did make money from that, and so um, and the hypersexuality and the things involved with that, with the music industry. Now, um, I can say that when I was basically tortured and so on and so forth, I didn't, let's say, um, how should I say that, I I treated that as trafficking. Like, I wasn't duped by the trauma bonds, and I saw its crimes against humanity to begin with, and that's like an assassination, because it's kind of like Epstein type of things. And so I was like, well, love needs to be actually loving. I'm talking about, and it all happens when people kind of like up level, so they're isolated from the community, or let's say sex positive community that talks after the Me Too about the sex that we do want, um, or studying, I don't know, aromatherapy that talks about basically the fact that is basically understanding that the physical side effects of ritual abuse. And um, and when it comes to the fact that people in therapy are basically themselves probably tortured and try to traffic their patients. Okay, and then just another way to say that is like that versus orgasmic birthing is not about transmuting pain to power, but about actually facilitating life, love that is actually loving, sensuality that is actually honoring of self. Um, Now, this is basically showing how the many structures that were um, by design causing birth to be painful so that people will be born into trauma. And we see that in Genesis. And where we basically see that when the woman that would not be subjugated was exiled, then everybody were falling from heaven. And even the woman that was born out of the rib of the man became like a Lilith. Because that's her nature. The nature of a person is to be sovereign, is to grow, is to develop, is to and love has to be actually loving. So um, those that weren't honoring of that basically had just life of suffering and subjugation um, and again the fall from grace where and blaming that on the woman that you know trafficking cult. What can I say? So the entire um, corporate structure with all its ritual harvesting is basically becoming a cult, even in the best professions, let's say high tech, or then it makes a situation where people, their natural telos is to grow, to make a contribution, to, um, and that can only be done sovereignly. And this is, and it also exposes, the many storylines of, whether it's defense or defense spending and something like that. It's kind of like, well, the world needs to be supportive of orgasmic birthing. And no, it's not transmuting pain to power. It's basically pleasure of sexuality, continuing to cervical orgasms, continuing to birthing babies orgasmically. And everything in society is supposed to support that, from relational teachings to radical self acceptance to infrastructure that supports that. Um, per every person. And that both um, kills the fungal aspects of society that are like worried about the population, but having everybody enslaved and then everybody enraged and then having problems of the crime that they didn't want people to do. Because what were they thinking, right? And the ecosystemic issues that come with that. But it's true. Um, so the entire world that is changing, basically, the way I see it, is changing towards orgasmic birthing supporting world. Kind of like whether the people that try to control the people want it or not. Because if they don't want it, they should allow for willing consent. which necessitates orgasmic birthing supporting systems.